Welcome, everyone. We'll get started here in just a moment. So welcome to the third panel of the inaugural Ohio Clean Energy Summit, Local Communities Lead. Power Clean Future Ohio is proud to host the summit in partnership with the City of Cincinnati. My name is Sarah Spence, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Ohio Conservative Energy Forum. We are proud to support this summit alongside the Ohio Mayor's Alliance and the Ohio Environmental Council, and PCFO's many partners. OSEF is a conservative organization that works to advance clean energy policy solutions that emphasize market competition, consumer choice, and innovation. We sincerely appreciate the generous support of the Ohio Clean Energy Summit sponsors, which you can see here. Today, we're excited to discuss clean energy in your city's budget. How can cities leverage clean energy to save money and spur economic development? We are so pleased to be joined by a fantastic lineup of speakers, including Megan Kilgore, City Auditor for the City of Columbus, and Steve Malink, CEO of Malink Corp. Jeremy Faust, Environmental Sustainability Leader for Fifth Third Bank, will moderate our panel. So Jeremy, take it away.
Thank you, Sarah, and thanks again to Power Clean Future Ohio for convening this week's summit and today's session. As noted, I'm Jeremy Faust. I'm the Environmental Sustainability Leader at Fifth Third Bank, and we'll be moderating the discussion today. We've deliberately chosen to kind of avoid the traditional long presentations and focus instead on a conversation about another key element in our clean energy future, the impact to our city budgets. You've heard already this week from a panel about the solutions that Ohio municipalities are implementing and another about equitable solutions to these challenges. But we want to focus today a bit on the financial impacts of these growing changes and really how they affect municipal budgets and other economic opportunities. Some of these changes, of course, are good. We see new technologies growing around us. We see businesses starting here in the state. We see a host of job growth and manufacturing in these industries. And so clearly, a lot of value in leaning further into the clean energy space and really building our reputation as an energy leader. But we also see some challenges that we need to consider, whether that's the rapidly growing costs associated with major weather-related events, or just the reputational risks that can inhibit businesses from coming to our state, sometimes as a result of states and communities not supporting modern clean energy policies. Ohio, from what I understand, is the only state to repeal an existing renewable portfolio standard. And there's real concern here that certain decisions can have a negative impact on our attractiveness as a state, as a community, in bringing businesses here. At Fifth Third Bank, which is based here in Cincinnati, we're confronting many of these challenges every day. As the world continues to change, we're hearing more and more from our key stakeholder groups, be they customers or employees, and certainly from shareholders, about their expectations around environmental and clean energy issues. And many of these questions and concerns that we're hearing have to do with energy and the resulting emissions that we are creating as an organization. And frankly, this is one of the reasons we moved to 100% renewable power as an organization in 2019 and became carbon neutral for our operations last year. The groups that are urging these actions include some of the largest shareholder groups in the world, the BlackRocks, the Invescos, the T. Rowe Prices. They're all making very bold statements on these issues. And we as a company are certainly listening. We really have to. BlackRock, which is the world's largest asset manager, they've got more than $7 trillion in assets under care, talks about climate change as the number one issue that their clients are now raising with them. and they project that this is going to fundamentally reshape the global economy. So these coming changes will certainly have winners and losers, and we want Ohio to be on the winning side. We've recognized an enormous opportunity to grow our own business, driven in part by the rapid growth in our renewable energy financing business, and even kind of leaned into that further last year to make an $8 billion sustainable financing commitment that we would achieve as an organization over the next 4 years. So we're only one voice in this arena, but I'm excited to have some other voices with us today. Each is going to provide, I think, a different and insightful perspective on the energy challenges and opportunities that we are facing. Megan Kilgore is the City Auditor of Columbus, having been in that role since 2018, and as such, very, very attuned to the energy and climate-related impacts to a municipal budget. Prior to elected office, she was a municipal advisor and dealt with cities, counties, utilities, school districts, and the like on financing issues. She's also an adjunct professor at The Ohio State University and founder of Ohio Women in Public Finance, and excited to have her. Also, Steve Malink, who is founder and chairman of Malink Corporation, one of Cincinnati's leading energy businesses. They provide a variety of energy services: HVAC testing and balancing, building health monitoring, solar development, geothermal. Malink actually operates in 2 net zero energy facilities, which are remarkable spaces and really part of their process of incorporating the culture of clean energy into the work they do every day. Steve is also the author of Fusion Capitalism, a Clean Energy Vision for Conservatives. And then filling in today for Danelle Baird, who hasn't been able to join us yet, some of the challenges of technology. Sarah Spence will stay with us to answer some questions. Hopefully many of you know Sarah, who's with Ohio Conservative Energy Forum and have spent time with the Ohio Environmental Council, but excited to have her voice as part of this conversation. So let me jump into our questions. And Auditor Kilgore, I'll start with you, but as the other panelists can think about this as well. You know, as we think about investing in clean energy efforts, renewables, electric vehicles, efficiency, how do these investments benefit a community's economic growth potential, and what are you seeing in this space?
That's a great question, Jeremy, and thank you everyone for listening in today. I'm delighted to be here. I'm the Auditor of Columbus, and so for those of you who may not know, what our responsibilities are here, we're the revenue side of the city. And so if you think about, what drives the city of Columbus, what powers us, it's tax revenues. The more we can grow our local economy, the more services we can provide our residents. And so, Jeremy, I constantly have an eye as to how we can either optimize jobs. We can, frankly, get ahead of trends. We can think about the jobs that are going to be here in 5 and 10 years. And so for me, and especially when I was in the private sector, I worked a lot with the coastal cities who were arguably already doing a lot of work in these areas. So I feel like Columbus is quite proactive, actually. But let me tell you, as auditor, why I care so much about this is that we have to prepare now for the economy that we want in the future. And part of that includes creating the jobs and the job training that we're going to need. I'll give you a really easy example, Jeremy. That's gas-powered vehicles, combustion auto engines. These engines are being phased out by major auto manufacturers. And, right now, Ohio still, though, is largely driven or fueled by those combustion-type jobs. And so I've been very supportive of, now that we've seen so much investment as well as federal money and just really thoughtful programs in clean energy, we really do need to double down in our job upskilling for these new types of jobs. Not only does investing in clean energy leads to, really mitigating cost, but it really does lead to our ability as a community to mitigate public health costs and, just optimize the well-being of our community.
That's wonderful. I see Danelle was able to join us. So for those of you meeting him for the first time, you should be excited that he was able to jump in and join the panel today. He's the founder of Block Power, which is a New York-based clean tech startup. Really fascinating model of incorporating energy efficiency projects on the local level. And what Zanelle's been able to do, which is particularly unique, is attract some significant capital from outside parties, recognizing that making these investments in these communities can be beneficial economically, financially, but also really supports the community. So excited to have him with us today. We were talking a bit about investments in clean energy and how those benefit a community from an economic growth standpoint. Do you want to weigh in just on your experience and how you're seeing some of those investments play out in the communities you're working in?
Yeah, absolutely. Super excited to be here with you all today. I spent a lot of time in Cleveland when I was part of President Obama's first campaign, and then in Columbus, Ohio, when I was working with a construction union that's based out of Columbus with Matt McClellan and those guys, the Laborers International Union of North America, and then are now working with some pastors in Cincinnati to help them think about clean energy at scale in low and moderate income parts of Cincinnati and what kind of jobs can be created. So we know that millions and millions of buildings across the country not only waste fossil fuels, which costs a bunch of money. It's bad for the environment. It's bad for the building owner's pocketbook and profitability. But the buildings are actually making people sick. They have lead, they have asbestos, they have mold. They can cause asthma, cancer, and respiratory illnesses, comorbidities with COVID-19. And so we know that when we invest in clean energy in buildings in low and moderate income communities, that as we improve that building's infrastructure, not only are we going to save that building money from reduced fossil fuel waste, from reduced fossil fuel infrastructure, not only are we going to make that building more valuable because now it's green, it's smart, but we're going to make that building healthier. And so for those of us who have kids or parents that are living with us or staying in the buildings, we want to make sure that those buildings are green and smart and more profitable, but they also need to be healthy. And so we're grateful that we've been able to partner with private sector capital to make those kind of investments and create jobs and healthy buildings in low income communities.
Yeah, exciting that you guys really figured out this triple threat approach, right? You're investing in the built infrastructure in the community, you're saving money on the utility expenses in the community, and you're creating jobs in the community. It's such a win-win-win and great to hear. Steve, you see this from a slightly different angle, right? Malenk has done work across the country. You see communities making these investments, communities not making these investments. What have you seen really working and helping to drive growth for local communities?
Well, I'll first say, Jeremy, that as a private business owner, we've applied these same approaches to our own business. First and foremost, as you already mentioned, we have 2 net zero energy facilities, and I can speak to the strategic benefits of having made these investments. From improving the building envelope to improving the lighting, the HVAC, to putting solar on our rooftop and over our parking. These are not only saving us energy and reducing our peak demand charges on our utility bills, but more importantly, as I see it, they're soft benefits that I often call the HR and PR benefits. The PR benefits, obviously, that, we're getting opportunities like now to present our story, and the word gets out about how this is making us more successful as a company, and people want to follow leaders in this growing sector. But, the HR benefit is huge, and that is that we're able to attract talent on a scale that we've never been able to attract before. And so, my word is that, don't overlook these soft benefits that allow you to attract better, more customers, employees, and put you on a more sustainable and successful growth path going forward. In the work that we're doing across the country, installing solar arrays, we do work both for utility scale and for business owners, but absolutely more and more, Public companies, especially, I would say, are recognizing the risks of not transitioning to a clean energy economy, and they don't want to be viewed as being part of the problem in this very socially aware world in which we live. And they're helping lead this, transition away from a fossil fuel-based economy to clean energy. And it's finally good to see that the business sector, and now more than ever, our government is working in concert to make this happen at the federal level, and obviously here at the state and local level.
Yeah, I love that you brought up the HR benefit, Steve. I feel like it's underappreciated in some respects, just how much this can be a driver to attract and retain talent. I feel like a big part of our motivation at Fifth Third has been just that. And of course, one of the voices we hear most from are those employees who are urging us forward as an organization to do more. So thinking a little bit about kind of the government business connection and how those partnerships evolve, what are you as panelists thinking or seeing that's been particularly beneficial in terms of those collaborations? Where is it working, and what is it looking like? And Auditor Kilgore, I'll let you go first here.
Yeah, happy to start. I think there are a couple key ways that government, frankly, of all sizes can employ. First, internally is, I think you have to create a mission or a vision statement, something that the government strives to achieve, so that your strategic plans, your capital plans, and all of your budgeting initiatives have a focus to those goals. I think that's really important so that you can constantly come back and kind of keep yourself in check to make sure that you're in fact adhering to what your goals are. For example, our community, Columbus, is committed to becoming carbon neutral by 2050. And so we're ensuring, in all of our actions here at the city and our budget, our capital plans, et cetera, we're trying to ensure that we're doing our part to combat global climate change and improve the health of our community. But that goal is really embedded in just about every facet of our daily operations. Second, using that mission or vision, if you will, employ those goals externally. So as you're trying to, for example, grow clean energy jobs, you may be growing, job training programs, and you're certainly trying to enhance outreach with education to make sure that the jobs of the future are being adequately provided for by the educational partners.
Yeah, and that's great. We're certainly seeing more engagement from universities on the training and education piece. I feel like every year I get more outreach from students in this area who are looking to get into the space and find a new job. Steve, what are you seeing in terms of the collaboration between local governments and businesses? Has this been an opportunity area that stood out for you?
Well, I can speak to the great work that the city of Cincinnati is doing. I can't say that, we have, a special collaboration going on there per se, not as much as I would really like to have, but I'm so proud of what the city is doing in, thinking big. And it was just announced recently that they will be the largest municipal off-taker of a solar project in the country. The project will be completed by the end of this year. So, it's put Cincinnati and by default Ohio on the map as being a clean energy leader. And it's great to see that some of that attention and recognition is moving away from other parts of the country where, there's been, a longer term commitment. I would just like to also just add on to what Megan said, that I think this is such a strategic opportunity. So often people will put energy as being kind of a tactical, an opportunity. You look at the energy cost on your budget, and it might be a small fraction of what your salary and wages are and everything else. But it has become part of not only our culture and our mission, but our brand. And when you put those three things together, it can transform your enterprise. And when I say enterprise, it could be a business, it could be a government or a school. And it has ours. There is no decision that I've made in our 30 plus years of being in business that has been more transformative than our decision to make a commitment to being a sustainability leader in our industry and in our community. And again, not only for the energy savings, but for those HR and PR benefits I spoke to before.
Yeah, a great testament to what this can look like when it works really well. And Danelle, Block Power is the same way, right? I mean, you guys are doing great collaborations, I assume, with a lot of different communities and probably small businesses. How is that kind of government business connection working, and how are you seeing that from a clean energy investment standpoint?
I'd like to build on what was just shared. I mean, I think, Steve mentioned there's a lot of recognition that's come to the city of Cincinnati for the public commitments they've made. We'd love to see even more robust public-private partnerships across Ohio between local businesses in Ohio, local governments in Ohio. And then if you need to bring in a big corporate partner like a Google or a Microsoft, they'll be there as well. But those public-private partnerships can be around the idea of one or two cities across the state of Ohio being one of the first cities in America to commit to going green. Now, we know that 200 cities across the country have already committed to go green, some of them by 2050, some of them by 2040. But what we really need is like real leadership where a mayor and a city will say, we want to go green within 5 years. So by 2026, the city of Cincinnati or the city of Cleveland or Dayton or Toledo is going to be 100% green. And because we're making that commitment, the federal government's going to be there, Google's going to be there, Home Depot and Lowe's are going to be there, the labor unions are, because everybody's going to be inspired by the idea of overhauling and replacing all of the infrastructure in the real estate and in the transportation sector. It's going to be such an inspirational vision that you'll have corporate partners and local partners. Of course, your local manufacturers are going to be excited to produce the insulation, the light bulbs, maybe the electrical vehicle charging stations, maybe heat pumps that they're made in China and Japan right now, but we need them to actually use carbon as a refrigerant, which China and Japan cannot do. Well, why can't we build that in Ohio and have Ohio be the global leader of the next generation of all electric building heating systems that use carbon as one of their main materials? That can be an American-led innovation that creates American jobs on the manufacturing side, on the installation side. And I think that's the kind of public-private partnership that we'd like to see more cities in Ohio and in the upper Midwest to adopt, because that's the kind of leadership that America needs right now. And that's the kind of leadership that's always come out of Ohio.
Yeah, it's a great aspect of this as well. And again, I feel like you guys are a great example of showing how this works and the communities you're currently doing work. But, with an eye towards the fact that we may have some of those municipal leaders on the call today and they're listening in, maybe they're getting excited about your vision. Can you talk a little bit about, what sort of enabled you to build relationships with the investors that you have? I've seen JP Morgan and Salesforce and Andreessen Horowitz on that list. I mean, these are some big name folks that want to be part of the work that you're doing. They obviously see value. How do we as a state think more about attracting those investments and the partnerships that you're talking about?
No, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So thank you for pushing me to be a little bit more specific here, Jeremy. I mean, once you make that commitment, that public commitment, that's going to be covered in the newspapers, it'll even be covered in the Coast and the New York Times and the Washington Post, that we're the city of Toledo, or we're the city of Dayton, or the city of Lakewood, and we are going to be 100% green, not just by 2050, which a lot of people are doing, but we're going to do it in the next 5 years. Well, the Secretary of Transportation's got to come visit your city now and have a press conference about how the Biden White House is going to help the city of Lakewood meet that goal. Now Google Fibers, their ears are perking up. Oh, is the city of Lakewood going to be 100% green energy in 5 years? What are the things that Google can do? Do we have any data centers nearby? can we invest in project finance capital? That's interesting. Now you got your Silicon Valley venture capitalists. Oh, we hear Google's working with the city of Lakewood to go 100% green in the next 5 years. Well, we want in. We don't want to miss out on this. If Google's going to be putting in Nest thermostats in every building in the city of Lakewood, we want to make sure that, you know, Uber is there and that Uber is creating good jobs, or we want to make sure that we're building a digital reality, an augmented reality model of 100% of the buildings across the city of Lakewood, so that when Google is about to send someone in to install a Nest thermostat, you have venture capitalists that have funded a startup to build a digital model of 100% of the buildings in Lakewood, so that even before Google goes to install the thermostats, they know which room they're going to install the thermostat in, because there's a 3D model that was built. So the way that I've learned about innovation when it comes to green infrastructure, climate infrastructure, energy infrastructure, Wi-Fi infrastructure, and broadband is it's kind of a follow the leader approach, right? We were able to get Goldman Sachs interested, and then we were able to get Google a little interested, and then we were able to get Salesforce a little interested. And then we said, look, Salesforce, if you guys don't get on board, the train's leaving the station. We're just going to do this with Goldman, and you're going to be left out. And so you create a working group, which we all know how to do, almost a committee of people that are going to partner with you as the city of Lakewood to help you meet your goal that's inspirational of being 100% green in 5 years. So in my view, yes, it's difficult. Yes, it's tough to think about. There's going to be some meetings where people show up and complain. But if you show that leadership and make that public commitment, then the Googles and the Goldman Sachs, they will be there, they'll have your back, and they will help you reach your goal of going green within the next 5 years. And they'll bring millions of dollars to the table. They'll bring all the data, all the resources. They'll help you train up your workforce, and they'll help you get reelected.
So I appreciate the deeper dive there into some of those investments. I feel like each of the communities in the state is constantly looking at ways to attract new business, new investment. I know Centrifuge down in Cincinnati, which is one of the leaders in our startup ecosystem, constantly trying to figure out what's the next big thing. How do we pull people to Cincinnati? And they are increasingly leaning into the clean tech and clean energy space as an opportunity to drive more investment in our community. So there's lots of great opportunities there. Let's turn now and talk a little bit about government budgets. We're all impacted one way or another by the finances associated with the communities in which we live. And from what I'm hearing, we're already starting to see the impacts from some of the changes that are happening. Again, I know down in Cincinnati, Columbia Parkway, one of our main routes into downtown, has had major landslide issues in recent years that are driving some really significant needs for the government to step in and do stabilization work at 17 million and rising in terms of what those costs are. So Auditor Kilgore, again, I mean, you get to see firsthand how this looks in Columbus. What are you seeing in this space in terms of some of those future costs and risks?
Well, I love the energy that Donnell brought to the table, because that's what I'm here about. I love the innovation. A couple of years ago, I had the privilege of going to the Cooper Hewitt Museum up in New York City, the design arm of the Smithsonian. And it was awesome because it was about the future of transportation. And every single, bit of that exhibit was what I would love to see Columbus lean in towards in the next few years. We've got the words, innovation and, frankly, the future of good, clean energy jobs, they're linked. And so I'm really emboldened by, Donnell, some of your thoughts that you put into this. And you're 100% right. When we're taking steps forward, Wall Street is listening, investors are listening. Part of what my job is to sell bonds that actually helps finance our major capital projects. And a big difference in the last few years has been some of our investors are looking for good ESG, which that big word, environmental, is a huge selling point. And so you're going to see an enhanced focus on things like green bonds. Is your community actually committing, You're not just kind of talking the talk, but you're out there walking too. And so I always look at any time Wall Street starts moving, then the rest of the country, especially for local governments, we're going to follow suit too. And so I kind of want to share more of a macro level, if you will, because I think Steve hit on some really good points, acknowledging that when it comes to this kind of stuff, one size does not fit all. Every local government will have a different, risk, if you will, to climate impact. So, what I want to kind of share with you is that we're already seeing the financial risk being assessed by the rating agencies on Wall Street. So, for instance, I've answered questions from Standard & Poor's, Fitch, and Moody's, have been doing so for some time, but there's definitely an increase. So I think just for the sake of example, it'll probably be best for me to share with you how Moody's looks at, quantifying environmental risk. And so they really look at it in two broad categories. First, what are the consequences of any, regulatory or policy initiatives that seek to reduce or prevent environmental trends? And what's really important about this is that Moody's does try and assess the risk of things like ambiguity, a lack of clarity in a policy, which could actually harm governments in our ability to adapt to those regulations. That's financial risk. So that's a really important part. I would say very broadly, we have to be very clear about what our goals and our missions are so that we can work, very proactively towards those. Secondly, absolutely, Wall Street rating agencies seek to quantify the adverse effects of direct environmental trends and hazards, so pollution, droughts, severe natural and human-caused disasters, and of course, climate change. Those direct environmental trends, especially those arising from climate change, rising temperatures around here, are very incremental, typically in nature, right? So they're developing over long time frames. So the agencies do spend a lot of time, even right now, talking about what that incremental proactive action could be that the city of Columbus should be employing right now to mitigate especially that future risk. So those are good credit positive goals for any government in Ohio. Starting now to think about how you're going to make steps today that'll impact your bottom dollar in the future. Secondly, I would say, the long-term environmental trends, future hazards, and so forth, they're always looking at risk, right? And so, for example, that could be like the implementation of regulations or even technological changes that could mitigate effects of those trends, adaptation strategies, rising income levels that could actually improve a government's tax base, i.e. clean energy jobs, and therefore allowing it to finance needed improvements. So I'm really impressed by the depth, Jeremy, that the agencies have already gone into, to ascertain and try to quantify. But subtitled perhaps below all of those metrics, quality of governance. And I think that's a really big piece across our entire country that's not political, it's an economic, decision, is how proactive are we going to be?
Yeah, we don't often think of Ohio as a key risk area, when it comes to some of the obvious impacts. We're not particularly prone to coastal flooding or earthquakes or tornadoes, but as you note, some of the risks that are kind of a little behind the scenes, right? People aren't thinking day to day. Most of the public's not thinking about bond ratings and kind of the perceptions of Wall Street that are putting money into communities and allowing us to operate. But it's really this growing risk in the space that we all need to be mindful of, and hopefully we can socialize some of those challenges so that everybody's aware of what we may be facing. Steve, as we look forward over the next decade, I feel like you've been a great forward thinker throughout your career and identifying what the next opportunities are. But when you project out over the next 10 years and you think about some of these risks and how this is likely to impact communities and what they're dealing with, what are you seeing and what do you think are we not focused enough on?
Well, because I'm involved in the electric sector, I'm very concerned about our grid, both from a, being properly protected from natural disasters, from cyber attacks. We saw what happened last week with what happened with the gas pipeline that took down part of the East Coast line. We saw what happened in Texas earlier this year. I think those kind of disasters and threats will only increase in size and frequency over the next 10 plus years. So we need to start building a smart and resilient and distributed energy grid of the future as soon as possible. As a homeowner, I can say that the way I'm most impacted by climate change, I think, is twofold. One is my basement floods now more often than ever it had previously. I've been here for 25 years. And in the last 5 years, up until the last 5 years, it had never flooded. And people who put in French drains and sump pumps, they say they've never seen, such an onslaught of downpours and storms. And that's increased their business, which is a good thing, I guess. But for the rest of us, it's not so good. But also, taking down the power lines and losing power, even if it's as little as 4 or 6 hours, can be a major inconvenience. How can we make our grids more resilient from those kinds of events? And I think, the way the future is, we need to move away from this central power grid model where you have central power plants that are 50 miles away transmitting and distributing electricity to every home. Increasingly, we need to invest in microgrids where every home and every business becomes its own grid, powered by solar energy, and with batteries, you can sustain yourself overnight. And just to add to what Megan had said, I would say that, I'm sorry, it was Donnell actually. He was talking about making these pledges and commitments for all the government leaders out there who are looking for an easy way to start that doesn't maybe challenge your budget so much. It can be something as simple as making a pledge, which costs nothing to do. I remember it was 15 plus years ago being in the city of Chicago and hearing Mayor Daley proclaim to the world that we're going to become the greenest city in the country. It cost him nothing to say that, but it suddenly inspired hope, confidence, and respect. And so, not that you want to be insincere on your proclamations like that, but that can go a long way to putting the machinery in motion in your town, in your county, and beyond to start to make things happen. But also, from a budgetary standpoint, I don't think that the city of Cincinnati had to even make investments. Initially, they were talking about maybe investing in solar energy behind the meter to maximize the return on investment. But ultimately, they kind of defaulted to putting in this massive solar farm not too far from here that would power all their needs. And they're simply the off-taker of that energy. They didn't make the investment. Somebody else is making the investment, maybe being financed by Fifth Third or someone like that. But there's opportunities from everybody in finance to manufacturing to the service economies of our country to partake in this growing economy and to make money, to become healthier, more secure, and of course, stem the worst ravages of climate change.
Yeah, thank you for that, Steve. So now, in terms of, it seems like you and Block Power through you has done a lot of work on the community level. You've engaged, homeowners, renters, nonprofit organizations, small businesses. What is your sense of kind of how they're thinking about these issues? Do they understand some of the risks that are out there? Are they preparing? And what do we need to do to make sure that we're connecting to the extent that there's not a universal understanding of some of these issues and ultimately what the risks are for these organizations and these groups going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why local government is so important and so powerful, along with our trusted institutions in our community, you know, our religious institutions, places that people trust. I mean, when I was starting business school, and, you know, when I spent a few months in Cleveland on the first Obama campaign back in 2008, the American economy was in free fall. And that was because Wall Street had lied to everyone, that they had said that, you know, you can have a mortgage and it was going to be trustworthy, or you could have 5 mortgages and that was going to be fine. And we ended up having the subprime mortgage crisis. And that was a breakdown of trust between our local communities and Wall Street, and rightfully so. Now, as was mentioned, Wall Street is saying it wants to do environmental social governance because they're concerned about climate change. They're concerned about economic inequality. We're glad that they're concerned about climate change and economic inequality. How much can we trust as leaders in local communities, their intentions, you know, this time versus last time? So it's important to have local government as an intermediary between our communities and Wall Street or the federal government or state government in order to help us understand what's real and what we can rely upon and what's false, whether it's regard to climate, whether it's regard to job creation, tax credits, you know, whatever. We believe that local communities on the ground must own and control the future green economy. The reason for that is I'm talking to you guys on my iPhone 10, right? I remember when cell phones first came out. I remember when iPhones first came out. They get smaller and smaller every year, right? And they get better and better every year. The camera gets better, the connectivity gets better, it's clearer, it's sharper. Now, instead of all turning on to the local news, we can all create our own news through our supercomputer that we have in our pocket via our iPhone. So this technological transformation has transformed communications. It's transformed media. It's transformed news and journalism. The same thing is going to be happening with energy. The big power plants, which burn fossil fuels, are going to disappear. And we're going to start to see energy production and consumption and distribution get smaller and smaller and smaller and more efficient and greener and smarter and smarter. Who's going to make and manufacture that equipment? Who's going to install it? Who's going to finance it? Who's going to maintain it? Is it going to be us in our local communities in a circle of trust? Is it going to be China? Is it going to be Wall Street? Is it going to be Silicon Valley? We believe that leadership at the local level, led by people to create the vision for their city or town or county that makes sense to the leadership in their community, we want them to be co-designers and co-owners of that future to kind of build the future that we all want. So of course you have to partner with local community leaders and invest the time that's necessary to build real relationships based on trust. And from there, yeah, you can issue a green bond and, you know, maybe Barclays buys it and helps to finance a set of solar plants or a micro hydroelectric facility or, you know, any of the innovation that's needed. And of course, the young people in your region are going to be excited. And of course, people from all over are going to come visit and want to live and work in one of the greenest cities in the country. So we think it starts with local community in terms of design, in terms of control, in terms of job creation. And then the financing and the innovation comes out of that.
You touched a little bit on the jobs piece, and PCFO has pointed out in the past that we've got over 114,000 folks in Ohio working in the clean energy sector, that it's growing 4 times faster than overall statewide employment. So a tremendous amount of momentum happening there already. But as we think about jobs, right, it's one piece that brings us all together. We all support job growth. We want to see our economies succeed. We want to see people working. How do we kind of lean into the job piece of the clean energy segment to make sure that it's working for our communities and it's working for the people there? Auditor Kilgore, I'll start with you since you've got a keen eye on some of our municipal budgets and likely have seen a lot of this firsthand.
Yeah, I think, Donnell hit the nail on the head when we talked about the economics, right? When you see, the economic benefits start producing, that's when folks start paying attention and you're going to see an increased focus. And I'm going to give you an example, Jeremy. I know you're looking for kind of job details, and I'll tell you, like, probably my best experiences learning about the jobs in clean energy come from my very good friend Jennifer Lynch, who works in this space. And actually, I grew up in Gallia County. I grew up in southeastern Ohio, and so I grew up in an era of coal jobs, right, heavy manufacturing, and seeing, especially through, some of the sponsors on this event today and so forth, the efforts that they have been digging in on. That's what our future of the state of Ohio is. That's really exciting to me. But I want to focus on two things. I've been in this business for about 20 years that I have seen what I'll call an evolution, like two pivotal moments where I've said, you know what, things are starting to change in a very positive way. The first one was when Amazon conducted their absolutely brilliant endeavor to obtain the secret information of just about every community in the world, right? Where they wanted to potentially grow. They asked so many questions about environmental impact, risk, what the communities were doing to be proactive. And they also asked really good questions about the infrastructure. And Steve used the word grid quite a bit. But I love the word infrastructure because I do think, just as we saw, quality of governance be very important during things like the pandemic, I think quality of infrastructure is super important as we look at economic development and the movement of jobs. And so right now, something that I did not do, 15 years ago, when I'm meeting with investors who are coming to look at Columbus, and they're saying, you know what, we're coming from the coast, we're looking at maybe setting up a shop here. In addition to asking good questions about talent and technology, they're also asking me about our infrastructure. What are your commitments to maintaining that infrastructure? How does your water system look? How does your sewer system look? I mean, I say this is my favorite, sexiest subject, but I get to answer really good questions about our landfill. And I love the word capacity because it's kind of a play on words of the word city within that word. I love the idea that intentional capacity can be an economic development tool. And, here in the city, we're very fortunate. Unlike a lot of folks around the entire country, we have redundancy in our water. We have different systems from where we actually collect and pool our drinking water. That is not the case in a lot of places. Also, water availability. You'll see some of our quote-unquote peer cities, our competitors, struggling in a big way with the provision of water. And for me, that is an economic development tool where we can start seeing a shift in companies who are looking where they're going to be in 10 years and in 15 years. And getting back to your very specific question, for me, that means jobs. And so not just clean energy jobs, but making sure our landscape provides for upward mobility when it comes to all types of jobs.
And Steve, I'm curious to get you to weigh in on this too. I mean, you're certainly a job creator. Malink is a growing business, and you're attracting people to the industry as your business grows. But what are you seeing as the opportunity from a job growth standpoint?
The solar and wind power industries are two of the fastest growing economic opportunities there are in the country and in the world. They're growing double digits every single year. And how many industries are seeing that kind of growth? But the neat thing about solar and wind is that they're fairly labor intensive relative to traditional fossil fuel extraction, refinement processes. And so that's where, the job creation opportunity really comes into play. And when you talk about designing, constructing, and servicing solar arrays, whether it be mounted on rooftops or on the open ground, it's not a highly automated process, at least yet. And the other industry, fossil fuels, I mean, if we talk about mining coal, it used to be a very labor intensive process 100 years ago, but now it's a very mechanized, automated process. And so the jobs have been lost in West Virginia and Kentucky and Ohio more for that reason, and for the fact that it's just a dying industry, but more so than from the, you know, the threat of clean energy. But same thing with wind power. You know, we have, we're blessed with, the great thing is we're blessed with all the renewable energy sources in our state that are available, from hydro and the Ohio River to solar across the state, wind in the northern parts of the state, and then in bio even. I mean, we're an agricultural state as well. And so there could be a huge future in bioenergy.
Stephen, will you also talk for a minute about kind of the I don't want to say non-traditional side, but in some sense, it is the more traditional side. You know, wind and solar get a lot of attention because they're visible. You guys do a lot of work with, you know, HVAC testing and balancing. You do work in, I mean, you've created a new technology for kitchen hoods. You're doing geothermal work. What are some of those unseen aspects of the clean energy job space that people maybe they're not thinking about, but they're still growing quickly?
Well, big picture, it is this: the electrification of everything movement. We have to get away from heating our homes with natural gas and oil, from heating our hot water with natural gas and oil, to doing everything with electricity. Donnell mentioned heat pumps before. Electric heat pumps are the way of the future for heating and cooling our homes, as well as heating our hot water. So there's going to be a huge opportunity for installers of this type of equipment in our homes and our businesses going forward to, you know, wean us off our dependency on these fossil fuels. But you know, insulation I mentioned before, and we need to upgrade all our homes and buildings with LED light bulbs and LED lighting systems. You know, when I think of any building, whether it be a home or an office or a manufacturing facility, the lowest hanging fruit, or the 4 major categories in which to address, would be lighting, the building envelope, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. And then once you've reduced your electric load as much as possible, how do you supplement your building with clean energy from there, and you put solar on the rooftop or on the ground. So yeah, energy efficiency, there's probably more jobs to be had in that field right now than there are in solar and wind. And then one other point to maybe close on this would be to just say that we can't wait for someone else to create the demand that then creates the jobs. I know a lot of leaders are interested in creating job creation opportunities, but we have to first create the market demand for those job opportunities. And that's going to take people like all of us on this call to make a commitment to investing in clean energy.
So we're getting closer to the end here. Let me ask each of you as we wrap up here, for kind of just the one maybe most important idea, suggestion you would have. We got a lot of communities and economic development professionals and leaders on the call. What do you want them to take away from this conversation in terms of what they can start implementing in their communities, what they should be focused on, that's really most important as a next step?
I'll happily start. I would say, you know, building blocks. You know, as Steve has already pointed out, there's some very basic and very simple ways that communities can start really stepping forward in this topic. And they're also, you know, very thoughtful, I'll say dual responses as well. For example, commitments to clean energy, as well as a commitment to minority contracting or social justice issues related as well. So for me, I'm excited about, you know, the kind of the visioning behind this. It's not just right because, you know, we are very concerned about impacts to our environmental well-being. It's right for public health, but it's also right for our local economy.
And Jeremy, I would just say that the 2 simple things that everybody on this call can do right now is, 1, I already said, make the pledge. Make the commitment and announce it to everybody that you're going to be carbon neutral by, and be bold, think big, say 2025. Fifth Third has already done it, as you mentioned, net zero emissions. Apple and many of the top tier companies have already done this. Our company did it 10 years ago. We don't have to think that this is a 20 to 30 year journey. We can do it today by making the pledge. And then the second thing is to just buy clean energy from a clean energy provider if you don't have the budget right now to make these investments yourself and realize the economic returns. And for the average homeowner, what this means is opt for the green power option with your local utility. And there may be a slight premium of cost to buy green power from the grid rather than traditional brown power. But what that amounts to is about the cost of a Starbucks coffee per month for the average homeowner. But for large communities and cities that would be buying in scale and over the long term, over 30 years, for example, your cost would be less than more than likely what you're paying right now. So those two things you can do right now and make your city a leader.
Great suggestion. With that, I know we're almost out of time. Thank you to our panel. And Joe, I will turn it back over to you to close us out.
Thanks, Jeremy. I'm Joe Flaherty, Executive Director of Power Clean Future Ohio. I want to start by just offering my thanks and appreciation to all of our excellent panelists today and also over the past 2 days. We've had some really fascinating discussions. I thought today's was incredible. And I think the key takeaway I got, I think from all three of our distinguished panelists and our moderator was be bold, pledge to reduce your emissions, commit to being carbon neutral. And, Power Clean Future Ohio is here to help you do that with your local community. So please, there's links in the chat to sign the Ohio 30 by 30 pledge and visit our website if you're interested in joining Power Clean Future Ohio as a local government, or if you're a business, please look up ways in which you can get involved in our website to become a Power Clean Future Ohio partner. So thanks again to our panelists for participating today and sharing your expertise with our audience. I'd like to extend an extra special thanks to Jeremy Faust with Fifth Third, based in Cincinnati. We wish we could be in Cincinnati with you this week, and we've been highlighting our host city throughout the week and appreciated your support for the work you're doing with us across the state of Ohio. If you're not already registered for our other event, which is happening tomorrow, our marquee event, we'll be dropping a link in the chat for you now. We hope to see you at our discussion tomorrow at 10 a.m. is when the marquee event will kick off. We'll have a spectacular lineup of speakers, including the Chief of Staff to the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy at the Department of Energy, Shara Motati. So please tune in for that, along with another great lineup of speakers. We'll be sure to follow up with recordings of today's session, as well as our past 2 sessions and resources from our week of events. So thank you again to our panelists. Thank you for participating and tuning in for today. And we will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. for our marquee event. Have a great afternoon.